Alright guys, what we're working on today is this Cub Cadet LTX 1048. Okay, what I'm going to be doing is doing the spindles and putting new blades on it. To get this deck off, it's actually very simple. What you got is you put the deck all the ways down, and you got these guys here, you pull, okay, and they hold the, you can pull them and you can actually turn them like that and set them like that. And they just got these little pins on both sides, okay? So you undo that, you pull them, or just pull them out and lift the piece up if you want to do that. And you got one pin up on the front, okay? The pin up on the front uses this little quick disconnect tab, okay? Once you get them off, then you got this blade guard. And with the blade guard, I use a number 1/2 inch socket to pull the two bolts that hold the blade guard off. Okay, so now I was able to drop that, pull the deck out. I can show some pictures underneath when I slide it back up under. Because one of the spindles, one of these spindles, see? Spindle's bad. So now the next thing what you got to do is you got to take this cover off. You got the three screws there. Okay, get this cover off. And then you can lift the deck up. Two hands there. Lift the deck up, and you can take that big nut off there to get your blade off. And then you can unbolt the spindle. So I'll make some video of that, showing that. So as you can see, it definitely needs blades. And it needs a spindle, as you can hear. So I'm gonna put a pair of them in there, and I'll show that to you guys. Here's my parts that I got for this guy. Here's the spindles, okay? Get that out of the box. So here's the new spindle. So out of the new spindle, it does come with new mounting hardware. Only thing I gotta reuse is the nut for it. And I got a pair of spindles and a pair of blades from Amazon. So you wanna make sure when you put the blades on that you put them on correctly, the way they're supposed to go, and not upside down or backwards. Not that you can really do it, but it's doable. So you want to look at that and see how the edge is right there. It's got the cutting edge going that way. So you want to make sure to put your new blades on with the cutting edge going that way. So cutting edge is going counterclockwise. So yep. Alright, so what I did here is I propped the deck up against the wheel so I don't damage it, so I can get access to the underneath. The best way to really get the blades off is if you have an air impact, it works a lot quicker than a breaker bar to get the nut off. Sometimes you don't even have to prop the blade. What you have to do sometimes, though, that I found, this is what I do, is I take, for example, this 4x4 and put it in here, get the blade edge up against it, and use a breaker bar sometimes. You just got to watch to not hurt yourself and, you know, do this part here at your own risk type deal. But that's how I found to get the blade off, how I do it, you know, get the nut loose. So I'll prop it, and then I'll use a pry bar, and I will push down. The socket that I'm using is a 24 mil socket. So I've used a 1/2 inch and a 24 mil. It's probably actually, the other one's probably not supposed to be 1/2 inch, but it worked. This 24 mil seems to fit it tight. So I'll prop it this way. I'll put some pressure down on it, break the nut loose, and then I can go through, and you're gonna have to knock the grass off to get to the nuts for the spindle. So once you get them off, you can do it. Might be a good idea why people are in here, you know, clean the underneath of your deck, knock some of this loose dead grass off. It might make stuff cut better and work better. So alright, as you can see, I got this one side cleaned. I knocked all the dirt off. I still haven't changed the spindle yet, but now that I've knocked all the old grass, you can see there's the 4 bolts right there to unbolt the spindle, and spindle should drop right out. But as you can see, the difference on that side, you can see the rust and all that stuff. That's why you should really clean out from under your deck and all that stuff to keep the rust down. That's why they say to clean it anyway. So that way you can keep the rust out of your deck. You can see there's a drain hole right there. So but you can see the difference there, and you can see just how thick this stuff is. You know, you can just see it right there, and how gooey it is. So that's what will rot out a deck. But by luck, this mower lives inside, you know, once it cuts the grass, so it's not out in moisture all the time. But you know, that's what you got to watch. So, yep. So it'd be a good idea when you're in here, if you want, you can clean it up, paint it. I'm just gonna put a spindle in, put it back in, so we can get mowing. So that's, you know, take the nut off, and you can get that there. So that way you can get the new one off. So if you're just doing blades, you can just take the nut off and do it. So, alright, as you can see, I got this one side cleaned. I knocked all the dirt off. I still haven't changed the spindle yet, but now that I've knocked all the old grass, you can see there's the 4 bolts right there to unbolt the spindle, and spindle should drop right out. But as you can see, the difference on that side, you can see the rust and all that stuff. That's why you should really clean out from under your deck and all that stuff to keep the rust down. That's why they say to clean it anyway, so that way you can keep the rust out of your deck. You can see there's a drain hole right there. So, but you can see the difference there, and you can see just how thick this stuff is. You know, you can just see it right there, and how gooey it is. So that's what will rot out a deck. But by luck, this mower lives inside, you know, once it cuts the grass, so it's not out in moisture all the time. But you know, that's what you got to watch. So, yep. So it'd be a good idea when you're in here, if you want, you can clean it up, paint it. I'm just gonna put a spindle in, put it back in, so we can get mowing. So that's, you know, take the nut off, and you can get that there. So that way you can get the new one off. So if you're just doing blades, you can just take the nut off and do it. So, alright, so as you remove the 4 bolts, the spindle comes right out. So you can see it definitely needs bearings. This one's nice and tight. Here's the new one. I took the 4 bolts out, and you just, before you put it in, just sit down and make sure that they are the same. As you can see, they are. So you just put it back up in there, put the 4 bolts in, tighten it down, and then you can go ahead and go on to the other side. Alright, so here's the one blade. As you can see, new blade, new spindle, reuse the nut, and comparison to the old blade. So you can look at the differences on them too right there, and just see the difference. And the same with here, but at the end, see how worn down it is versus that. So big difference. So, but it should cut better with new blades and spindles. So, alright, with these blades, make sure you put them on. See how that's keyed that way? You put them on there, make sure you key them the right way, and that it sits on there flush and it's not off sitting, because it won't work right if you have it not sitting on there right. So you just screw that down, and you know, block your blade and tighten it up. So as you can see, you can see the 4 bolts that I took out, in which these are actually the new bolts I put back in. So you do the same on both of them, and make sure when you get the blade on there, you can spin it over and it doesn't hit anything. Make sure you don't have a bent deck or anything. So sometimes these decks will get bent, and you don't want it to hit with a new blade. And the other thing to make sure is your blades don't hit there. Make sure you don't have too long of a blades. So, because they could hit if you have the wrong blades, if you got the wrong ones and didn't realize it. So check that too, just for safety's sake. So, alright, before you put this top cover back on, make sure you put your belt in your pulley groove, so that way it's in there, because this top cover acts as a belt guard. See the little metal strip in there? To hold the belt in place. So make sure you put your belt back on there properly, and then put your 3 screws to hold your plastic cover back on. You got 1, 2, and 3. So make sure to put your 3 screws on to hold your cover on, and make sure your belt's in place. If you needed to put a new belt on, now would be the time. This belt looks pretty good. It's not too worn. It hasn't been slipping. So I'm gonna just reuse my belt. This is your deck's, you know, your pulley stop. So when you pull it off, you have a spring that hooks on right there to do it. The spring goes there, and it goes across to that. There, the cable sits in there. So I'll show that when I slide it back under there. Alright, so here's my spring I was telling you about. What you gotta do is you gotta take this spring and you gotta hook it back on, if you can see, hook it back onto there so it goes up and hooks. Okay, then you pull this back, you can slide that back through there, and that little square piece, oops, sorry. There we go. Sorry, it's kind of hard to do it all one-handed. So you hook that back on there, and you got this nifty little clip that you put back through that. Got this nifty little clip. It goes in there. You just kind of push it back down and pop, and it holds it all there. Okay. So now the next thing you got to do is lower the deck down. Let me go over here. And you can watch when I lower the deck back down. You can see them arms coming down. Oops, let me get this in focus. Sorry about that. Okay, you can see them arms coming down. And of course, just move the deck a little bit so your arm drops. And there you go. And then you move the deck around to get it where this one was in the bottom hole. Get it where that bottom hole is. It's all the way down. So I might have to lift it up a little bit to get it the bottom hole in. Actually, it might be caught up on the other side, maybe. No, it's not caught on that. So I'm gonna have to set the phone down, lift it up, and get it in line there, and release that. There you go. You can see I released it. It's going through that bottom hole. Do the same on the other side, which I haven't done. And then you got just the one rod up front right there. You can see where it goes through. You put it back through, you put your washer, then you put your pin back through and lock it. Alright, so now I got it all back on. I put the blade guard on. I got the belt and the pulley. Just look over, make sure all your belts are riding on your pulleys where they should be. Nothing's... Actually, I guess I might need to swap that. That might have been underneath. Let me look at that. I'll tension it. I think that needs to go underneath. I think I put that on the wrong side. So that's what you got to watch. You do something like that when you engage it, it's going to tear up your belt. So I just realized I got that on the wrong side. So you got to watch and make sure you put everything on the right side of pulleys and cables. That's why I always check and look at it. So let me fix that, and then we can go for a trial. Alright, now I got that fixed. Before I try it, you can see the belt's tensioned. That goes under the belt, so it doesn't sit there and pull the belt down. And so you got to watch when you put it back on, make sure it goes under it. Don't put it on top like I did the first time. By luck, I checked it to make sure. And that's how you do it. So, yeah, so it's all good now.